Hello dear students, how are you? Today we are going to study a very important topic, and that is diaphragm. Before starting the topic again, I would like to talk to you certain things. There is a basic tendency to do something later. But do you know this? Sometimes later become never. So do it now. As Mark rightly said, the secret of getting ahead is getting started. So let's start ourselves. We are going to study diaphragm. This is the diaphragm. You can see between the thorax, above the lungs, and below is the abdomen. So let's study diaphragm. You can see this slide, and here is the diaphragm. Now diaphragm is derived from a Greek word which means partition. Diaphragm is a dome-shaped muscular fibrous septum that separates the thoracic from the abdominal cavity. Now it has a peripheral part also, which consists of fibers, and these fibers are muscular fibers, and they converge to be inserted into a central tendon. Let's see, first of all, this is diaphragm, and diaphragm is just like a parachute. Yes, it is like a parachute, and it has certain openings inside over here. This is for the passage of some structures. Here is the diaphragm. We can see this is the anterior view, and if we see the diaphragm from the inferior aspect, so this is the inferior aspect of the diaphragm. What you can see, this is the end above, this is the below, means we are seeing the diaphragm first of all from the inferior aspect. This is the anterior side, this is the posterior side, and what else you can see? Certain openings, and you can see over here whitish structure. This is the central tendon of the diaphragm. So you can see the diaphragm, the inferior aspect, and we can see the central tendon. The openings we can see over here is the inferior vena cava, the esophagus, and the aorta. What else we can see? Certain muscles on both the sides, and this is the spine. Let's study the origin of diaphragm. Diaphragm has three parts: a sternal part, a costal part, and a vertebral part, which is also known as a lumbar part. A sternal part is that part which arises from the posterior surface of the xiphoid process. And costal part is that part which arises from the deep surfaces of the lower 6 ribs. They are costal cartilages, and then they form right and left domes. There is another part, that is a vertebral part or the lumbar part, that arises from the upper 3 lumbar vertebrae. And they form the right and left crura or crus, and also the arcuate ligament, Yes. So regarding the origin of the diaphragm, it has a sternal part, it has a costal part, it has a lumbar part. Sternal part rises from the posterior surface of the xiphoid process. Costal part rises from the deep surfaces of the lower 6 costal cartilages, and they form the domes. And the vertebral part, this is the vertebral part. You can see the lumbar vertebrae over here. So lumbar vertebrae are present, and from this also the part of there is origin of the diaphragm. There are certain terms like medial lumbocostal arch or medial arcuate ligament. See, the word arcuate is derived from, is a Latin word. It is derived from the Latin word which means to bend like a bow. Bow, yes. And there is a arch. This arch is known as medial lumbocostal arch. Now there is a muscle that is known as the psoas major. It is a muscle which is present in the lumbar region, and when both the sides of the psoas major contract, it raises the trunk from supine position. So there is a muscle known as psoas major. Now we are talking about this medial lumbocostal arch. The attachments are from medial aspect. From the medial side, it arises from the body of first lumbar vertebra, that is the L1, and laterally it is present till the front of transverse process of L1. So medial lumbocostal arch arises from the body of L1 and laterally is up to the front of the transverse process of L1. Let's see the psoas major first. This is the psoas major muscle, right and left side, both the sides. You can see here also the lumbar vertebra, and what else you can see? The medial arcuate ligament. Here is the medial arcuate ligament. Okay, it covers the which muscle? The psoas major muscle, and arises from where? From the body of the vertebra L1 and reaches up to the transverse process. So these are transverse processes. So it reaches up to the transverse process of L1. So we are talking about the medial arcuate ligament. Now we have to study the lateral arcuate ligaments. Now there is one more muscle that is known as quadratus lumborum, and its fascia becomes thickened, and along with the medial arcuate ligament it forms a lateral arcuate ligament. Let's see the diagram first. Yes, you can see the muscle. Which muscle is this? This is the psoas major, and from the psoas major the medial arcuate ligament arises. Okay, the fascia of the psoas major muscle is formed by the psoas major muscle's fascia forms the which ligament? The medial arcuate ligament. And there is one more muscle near the psoas major, and that is known as the quadratus lumborum muscle. Its fascia gets thickened and it forms the lateral arcuate ligament. Here internal and external lumbocostal arches are written. Internal means medial and external means lateral. So there are two arches, medial and lateral arcuate ligaments. Medial arises from the fascia of the psoas major and lateral arises from the fascia of the quadratus lumborum. Okay, and the right crus. So what is the meaning of crus? Actually, this crus is again a word which is derived from the Latin word, and that means leg. It is a leg-like word. Okay, it is larger and stronger. Why? Because it has to pull lever down during each inspiration, and the origin is from the upper three lumbar vertebrae along with the IVD, that is intervertebral discs. While the left crus, the origin is from the upper two lumbar vertebrae. Now we have studied two ligaments, medial and lateral, but there is one more ligament, and that is known as median arcuate ligament. What happens? The medial margins of two crura, they form a tendinous arch in front of the aorta, and that is known as the median arcuate ligament. It is nothing, it is a ligament under the diaphragm that connects the right and left crura of the diaphragm. Let's see the diagram, it will be more clear to you. We already know which ligament is this. Medial arcuate ligament. Both the sides. This is the right side, this is the left side. So, medial arcuate ligament, lateral arcuate ligament. Medial arcuate ligament is formed over which muscle? Psoas major. Lateral arcuate ligament is formed over which muscle? Quadratus lumborum. Okay, and these two medial parts, the medial parts of these two crura, right and left, they join in between and they form the median arcuate ligament. Okay, they form median arcuate ligament. One more slide you can see of the median arcuate ligament. So let's see the three ligaments: median, medial, lateral arcuate ligaments. And if you see carefully, this is the median ligament and below that is the aortic opening. Aortic opening. Above is the esophageal opening, and you can also see the opening for the inferior vena cava. So this is about the origin of the diaphragm. And what about the insertion? The diaphragm is inserted into a tendon, and that is a central tendon. And if we see the central tendon, its superior part, its superior surface is fused with the fibrous pericardium. Remember, this diaphragm is a partition between the thorax and the abdomen. And in the thorax, what are the organs? What are the viscera? The heart. And heart is enclosed in pericardium. So the superior surface of the central tendon is partially fused with the inferior surface of the fibrous pericardium. And what are the features of central tendon? The central tendon is trilobar. 3 leaves are there. 3 leaflets are there. Middle, right and left. Out of these 3, right is the largest, left is the smallest, and middle one is triangular, and its apex is towards the xiphoid process. We'll see the diagram. And this tendon, this tendon is composed of several planes of fibers which intersect at various angles. This tendon is composed of several planes of fibers which intersect one another at various angles, and they unite into straight or curved bundles, and this arrangement is responsible for the additional strength of the diaphragm. Let's see. You can see over here the crisscross fiber, the crisscross pattern, and this is the central tendon. And central tendon, this is for the additional, this crisscross pattern is responsible for the additional strength. Okay. You can also see the superior view of the central tendon, and you can see the pericardium. Pericardium is attached to the on the superior aspect. Now what happens? Some of the muscle fibers of this right crus, they pass to the left and they surround the esophageal orifice in a sling-like loop. Because of this crisscross pattern, they also cross from right side to left side and they just surround the esophageal orifice. And it's a good thing. Why? Because it acts like a sphincter. It acts as a sphincter and it prevents regurgitation of the stomach contents into the thoracic part of the esophagus. Okay. What about the blood supply? The arterial supply is by the musculophrenic, pericardiophrenic arteries, then lower 5 to 6 posterior intercostal arteries, then also superior phrenic artery and then inferior phrenic artery. Superior phrenic artery is a branch of descending thoracic aorta, while the inferior phrenic artery is a branch of the abdominal aorta. And the venous drainage is into the corresponding veins, and they finally drain into the systemic veins. You can see the blood supply, rich blood supply. The blood supply is by the musculophrenic arteries and the pericardiophrenic arteries, posterior intercostal arteries, superior phrenic artery and the inferior phrenic artery, and the venous drainage is into the corresponding veins. What about the nerve supply of the diaphragm? Yes, it's very interesting. Right and left phrenic nerves, and the root value is C3, C4, C5. This is very, very important. Root value of the phrenic nerve C3, C4, C5. And what about the sensory? We talked about the motor nerve supply, and what about the sensory nerve supply? Now the central surface of the diaphragm are from the central surface of the diaphragm is supplied by the phrenic nerve, while the periphery part of the diaphragm is supplied by the lower 6 intercostal nerves. So if we just say motor and sensory nerve supply from the phrenic nerves, the difference is for the sensory nerve supply, and that is on from the periphery by the lower 6 intercostal nerves. You can see the diagram. Yes, the right phrenic nerve and the left phrenic nerve supplying the diaphragm. You can see the domes of diaphragm. Dome, yes, you know. Now we'll talk about the openings in the diaphragm. It is really very important, and as well as it's very easy. You remember the table of 2. 2 fours are 8, 10, 12, 8, 10, 12. These are the levels. T8, T10, T12. And then remember VOA, the voice of America. V stands for, yes, at the level of T8 is the inferior vena cava and the branch of the right phrenic nerve. At the level of T10 is the esophagus and T12 is aorta. VOA, inferior vena cava, esophagus and aorta. Now these are the major openings in the diaphragm. You can see the inferior vena cava, esophagus and the aorta. Now these are the major 3 main openings, okay? What about the small openings? There are certain small openings also in the diaphragm which you have to remember, like greater and lesser sphincteric nerves, greater and lesser sphincteric nerves for both the sides. The left crus is also pierced by hemiazygous vein, the sympathetic chain which is behind the medial arcuate ligament. Then the subcostal nerves and vessels, superior epigastric vessels and the musculophrenic vessels. So these are the structures which pass through the small openings in the diaphragm. Now, what are the relations of diaphragm? Superiorly, is the heart and the lungs. So superiorly is the pleura and pericardium. Inferiorly is the peritoneum, liver, fundus of stomach, spleen, kidneys and suprarenal glands. So you can see over here, superiorly is the pleura. These are the lungs, here is the diaphragm, superiorly is the pleura, and the heart, that is the pericardium, and inferiorly is the liver, fundus of stomach, and we cannot see over here the spleen, the kidneys and suprarenal glands are also the inferior relations of the diaphragm. Okay, now what are the functions of diaphragm? The functions of diaphragm are, number 1, it is a muscle of inspiration, because when it contracts, it pulls its central tendon down and increases the vertical diameter. So increases the vertical diameter of the thorax. So it is the most important muscle used in inspiration. Plus also it is a muscle of abdominal straining. That is when the diaphragm contracts, it also assists the contraction of the muscles of the intra-abdominal wall. So the intra-abdominal pressure is raised. Intra-abdominal pressure is raised. So it helps in micturition, defecation and parturition. What happens in breathing in and breathing out? Diaphragm contracts, so the vertical diameter is increased, and opposite happens when the diaphragm relaxes, that is during the expiration. Yes, it is also weightlifting muscle. It also helps in increasing intra-abdominal pressure, so helps in lifting, weight lifting. Okay. Then it also acts as a thoraco-abdominal pump. What do we understand by this thoraco-abdominal pump? Now the descent of diaphragm, when the diaphragm is getting lower, when it is contracting, it decreases the intrathoracic pressure. the thoracic pressure is decreased, but the intra-abdominal pressure is increased. So what will happen? When intra-abdominal pressure is increased, the inferior vena cava is compressed. When inferior vena cava is compressed, it forces the blood to move upwards into the right atrium of heart. So diaphragm acts as a thoraco-abdominal pump. Now let's study about the clinical anatomy of the diaphragm. We have already studied about the median arcuate ligament. Now median arcuate ligament can result in a syndrome that is known as median arcuate ligament syndrome or MALS. What happens when there is compression of the celiac artery? It results in this syndrome, which is characterized by abdominal pain, weight loss and epigastric bruit, that is a turbulent flow. Let's see the diagram. You can see over here the median arcuate ligament. Median arcuate ligament. And here is the celiac artery. This median arcuate ligament can compress the celiac artery and can cause the various symptoms. One more slide. Median arcuate ligament syndrome. The celiac axis is compressed and it can result in the epigastric pain and bruit. Now is the hiccup. Hiccup is a very common thing. We think that somebody is thinking about us and we have the hiccup. But I want to clear this fact that it is it's not like that. It is due to, it is a involuntary spasmodic contraction of the diaphragm. You get the hiccup. And it results due to vagus nerve irritation. Occurs after drinking or eating something. So there is the irritation of vagus nerve. Only that, because of that you get the hiccups. There are other diseases also in which hiccups are seen, like pleurisy, peritonitis, pericarditis or uremia. These are the other conditions. So hiccups is not due to that thing which we think. So what happens? This is the epiglottis. It's an open airway. You can see the air is moving out. But what happens when inspiration is there? This epiglottis snaps shut and causes the hiccup. Diaphragm contracts. Then there can be paralysis of diaphragm. How this paralysis can be there? It can be due to crushing or sectioning of which nerve in the neck? The phrenic nerve which is supplying the diaphragm. Then what will happen? The paralyzed side, it moves towards the normal side, and that is known as the paradoxical movements. Paradoxical movements means when the effects are opposite, like the diaphragm moves upwards during inspiration instead of moving downwards, and during expiration it moves downwards. The opposite things happen. Inspiration moves upwards and expiration moves downwards. So you can see the slide over here. Red means inspiration. This blue, sky blue means expiration, that is a resting phase. So during inspiration the diaphragm has to move down, but it happens the opposite, and that is the paralysis. Of which side? The right side. The X-ray is showing the same thing. Then there can be a shoulder tip pain. If a patient comes to you or asks you that I have a pain in the shoulder, so this doesn't mean that there is some pathology in the shoulder. There can be irritation of the diaphragm also. Why? Because the phrenic nerve and the supraclavicular nerves have the same root values, that is C3, C4 and C5. There is one more term that is known as eventration. Eventration of diaphragm means it is an abnormal elevation of the dome of diaphragm. See, this is the elevation of the dome of the diaphragm, that is known as eventration of diaphragm. Now, a very important point over here, we are going to discuss about the two foramens. One is the Bosc-Delex foramen, and another is the Morgagni's foramen. Now, Bosc-Delex foramen is a foramen. A foramen means a passage, an opening. This foramen is formed when there is incomplete fusion of the lumbar and costal elements of the diaphragm during development. Lumbar and costal elements causes Bosc-Delex foramen. While foramen of Morgagni, these are the small defects in the posterior aspect of the anterior thoracic wall. That is when there is a defect in the sternal and costal attachments of the diaphragm. Please understand, there are two foramens, Bosc-Delex and foramen of Morgagni. Morgagni is anterior, that is in the posterior aspect of the anterior thoracic wall, that is between the sternal and the costal attachments of the diaphragm. While Bosc-Delex is incomplete fusion of the lumbar and costal elements. Let's see the diagram, it will be more clear to you. Yes. So this is the anterior aspect, this is the posterior aspect. The openings are showing the, over here is the opening for the aorta, esophagus and inferior vena cava, right? So we talked about two foramens. On the posterior aspect is the foramen of Bosc-Delex, anterior is the foramen of Morgagni. Done. The knowledge of these foramens is very important because it can be pathological. How? A very important point. Hernia. Diaphragmatic hernia. It can be of two types, congenital as well as acquired. Congenital as well as acquired. The congenital types has four subtypes. Retrosternal, retro means behind the sternum, posterolateral, posterior and central. These two are common, these two are not common. Acquired can be traumatic or hiatal. Hiatal can be further subclassified into congenital and acquired. Is the classification clear? Diaphragmatic hernia is of two types, congenital and acquired. Congenital is of four types, retrosternal, posterolateral, posterior and central. These two are not important. The first two are important. And acquired ones are traumatic or hiatal, which can again be congenital and acquired. Let's see one by one. Retrosternal. Retrosternal hernia means through which foramen we are talking about? Foramen of Morgagni or space of Larry. That is the retrosternal hernia. So this hernia occurs where? Through the space of xiphoid and costal origins of the diaphragm. And it is more common on right side. It lies between the pericardium and pleura and it causes no symptoms. So we can see the slide in which we can see the retrosternal hernia or the foramen of Morgagni or space of Larry. You can see the sites of herniation for both the sides, right and left sides. Likewise, you can also see the posterolateral area. You can see the Bosc-Delex hernia. Bosc-Delex hernia, you can see over here, that is a posterolateral hernia. Left side is more common. We can see one more slide. So you can see the foramen of Bosc-Delex over here. Foramen of Morgagni, retrosternal, this is the sternum, so retrosternal, and here is the foramen of Bosc-Delex. So this is the posterolateral hernia and it is very common. It is situated at the level of 10th and 11th ribs and more common on which side? On the left side. And it is an emergency, it's a very serious condition because if not treated, not taken care of, it can cause the death of an infant within few hours of birth due to respiratory distress syndrome. Respiratory distress syndrome. So Bosteluk is back and to the left. This is the normal diaphragm. This is the normal diaphragm. And when there is the defect, Bosteluk's hernia, so there is herniation of the small lung. We can see that the intestine is protruding into through the hole in the diaphragm. This is the Bosteluk's hernia. While there are two more types, posterior and central hernia. This is not very common, very rare types. Not important. We can just have a look at the slide. Anteriorly is the Morgagni. Here is the central and here is the Bosteluk's hernia. Left side is about 85%. That is more common as compared to the right side. So this is a list of congenital diaphragmatic hernias. Then there can be acquired hernias also, which can be due to some trauma, like penetrating injuries of the diaphragm, for example by the bullet. See, if any penetrating wound to the chest below the level of nipples, if there is any penetrating injury or wound to the chest below the level of nipples, it should be suspected of causing damage to the diaphragm until proven otherwise. So it's not a very easy thing. It's a confirmatory thing that if there's any injury, like penetrating injury, like bullet injuries, and it is below the nipples, it definitely can result in it definitely has caused that trauma to the injury to the diaphragm. Just see if there is any injury below the nipples, so it can affect the diaphragm until it's proven otherwise. Then is the another type, it is a hiatal hernia. Hiatal hernia, hiatus means an opening. It can be again congenital or acquired. And congenital is known as the rolling type. First of all, let's have a look. What do you understand by hiatal hernia? Hiatal hernia means there is a hiatus in the diaphragm, opening the diaphragm, and there is the hernia. Hiatal hernia. What happens in congenital hiatal hernia? In congenital hiatal hernia, the stomach rolls upwards. The stomach rolls upwards, and it rolls upwards until it lies upside down. And that is known as rolling type of hernia, and it's a very serious condition. Why serious condition? Because the top part of the stomach is trapped above the diaphragm and it cannot slide back into the abdomen. So what will happen? The blood supply is cut off and can result in death of the tissue. In the congenital hiatal hernia, important point is that cardio-esophageal junction, the cardio-esophageal relation is undisturbed. See the diagram. See, this is the hernia, hiatus hernia. But this is congenital. Now esophagus, hiatus is there. The stomach, it rolls upwards. Its upper part has moved above the diaphragm. The stomach protrudes up through the diaphragm. And what will happen? Since it cannot slide back, so strangulation occurs when the blood supply to the herniated tissue is cut off, and it can result in death of the tissue. This is the rolling hiatus hernia. Rolling hernia is congenital. One more slide. Rolling, the upper part of the stomach is, you can see, it has rolled upwards. Let's see one more slide. This is the normal anatomy of the diaphragm, but what happens? The stomach has rolled upside down. So this is the rolling type of diaphragmatic hernia. There is a large hiatus, large opening in the diaphragm. Then we come to acquired hiatal hernia. It is a sliding type of hernia. It is very common and the causes are like obesity, some operative procedures. So what happens in this condition? The cardiac end slides into the hiatus. Here cardioesophageal junction is disturbed and it can result in gastroesophageal reflux. Let's see the diagram first. This is the normal stomach. Because of some operative procedure or obesity, the cardiac end of the stomach, it just moves up and it causes the disturbance of the esophageal, cardiac esophageal junction. That relation is disturbed and it can result in gastroesophageal reflux. Gastroesophageal reflux. Clear? See, sliding. This is the sliding hernia and here is the rolling hernia. Sliding, rolling. Clear? So lastly you can see one more slide and I think that's enough for today. So this is a normal anatomy, sliding and the rolling, that is also known as paraesophageal, just around the esophagus, paraesophageal hiatus hernia. Clear? I hope the lecture is clear to you. Oops. Thank you so much for paying attention. Have a nice day.